Hello. Is this on? Let's please welcome back Nicole Newnham.
First of all, I'd love to thank Doc NYC for having us here. This is really, really special. And to thank my producing partners, to IFC, Sapan Studios, This Machine, and NBC News Studios, who started it all. And I also want to recognize the folks who were storytellers in the film who are here tonight. Can you all stand up so we can recognize you? There's James Hamilton, Ed Rath, Joyce Gold, and Janet Wolf, and Regina Ryan, the editor of the Hite Report, and Mike Wilson, photographer. Thank you all. Oh, and Nicholas Lattimore. Thank you all so, so much for your contribution to the film and for your support of Shere Hite and her culture-changing work.
Wow, oof, I had goosebumps seeing you all. So I would love to have a really open conversation here. I'm just going to ask Nicole a couple of questions at the beginning, and then I'll turn over to you in the audience. But Nicole, you sort of alluded in your introduction to your first exposure to Shere Hite's work, and I was just wondering what's been the journey of getting this film made. As I was watching it again, I kept thinking, it must have been daunting to try and make Shere Hite a hero of this of this movement again. Can you talk about that?
Just about
from that when you were 12, saying the journey into now making this incredibly complex film and detailed and so well researched and yeah.
Well, I read her obituary in the New York Times in 2020, and the headline was Shere Hite. She described how women orgasm, and she was hated for it. And I almost fell off my chair, kind of remembering everything that the Hite Report had done for me over the years, and thinking about who was this person who did this, and why was she hated for it, and what happened to her. And the answers to the questions, as you've seen in the film, were so compelling and awe-inspiring that I started to think, anyone who read this obituary would have wanted to make a film about this, and Hollywood must be crawling all over it, and how would I ever compete with that? But I couldn't help but just be researching and daydreaming about it and thinking about it. And then I had this incredible meeting with Molly O'Brien at NBC News Studios, and she said, you should think of us for some of your future projects. We're doing things for, we're platform agnostic now, and we're making documentaries for different platforms. For example, we're developing a film about a sex researcher in the 1970s. And it was a Zoom call, but I was practically jumping through the screen. I was like, oh, is it Shere Hite? Because if it is, I really, really, really want to make that film. And Molly called back a couple of weeks later and said, yes, it was Shere Hite. And it turned out that there were producers at NBC News Studios, Erica Fink, was in development there, and she had read the obituary, and from a much younger generation than I, had the same question, but more like, why wasn't I taught about Shere Hite in women's studies and in school, and why haven't I ever heard about her? And she looked in the NBC News database, and this massive amount of material popped up, like it was a very famous person, So she knew that Shere had been a huge cultural phenomenon, and had the same question. So we had an incredible intergenerational team of people working on this project, and I think our process was sort of like a consciousness-raising group in and of itself. We all had to become comfortable saying the word clitoris to each other all the time, which none of us really were, which is kind of incredible in this day and age, but we still don't have conversations about sexuality. So the process of making the film itself was provoking conversations amongst us and our partners. It was a very powerful process, and we just became dedicated to trying to take this person who had been so caricatured and flattened, right, and really make her a fully human individual.
Yeah, I was thinking, I don't even heard the word sexologist. I don't even know, is there sexologist working today? It's just so not present in our mainstream dialogue. Did you find yourself, while you were researching the film, just constantly thinking about what would if Shere Hite was doing this work right now, today, in our present moment, when the moment you're making this film, did you find yourself comparing what you think might have been the contrast to the time that she was working and our time right now?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, we were constantly asking ourselves that question, and that was what was so sort of exciting about being able to engage a little bit around her legacy when Iris Brosh, who's also here tonight, had hi Iris, the amazing Iris Brosh. Iris held this requiem in Paris and for Cher, which you saw, and it was the first thing we shot. And I was really moved by seeing these younger French feminists, come and encounter Cher's legacy and pay homage to it and interact with it, and thinking about the importance of that. Because one of the things we really wanted to do in the film is slow down time the way you can do in a documentary and really look at how does this happen, because it happens to women, as was said by people in the film. And it's so true over and over and over again, not just women, but like iconoclastic people from oppressed communities who make change get shut up. And this is a way of looking at how that happens, and also kind of I think hopefully a little bit of a provocation and meditation on what do we lose? What do we lose when we lose people like Cher, and what can we gain by bringing those people back? And so it was a little bit of kind of like a re-gifting, I think, to younger generations in our minds. This person who was so prescient that she suits this time really well. She was thinking really, she was very ahead of her time in terms of how she thought about the constructs of sexuality and the construct of gender.
Yeah, I just cannot thank you enough and This Machine and NBC and IFC and Josh Saban for making this movie come out in this world. I really do. I feel so passionate that I hope people pick up this work. So that's enough from me. I would love to hear from you. Please, if you have a question or comment, let's just raise your hand and I'll call on you. And if I don't see you in the shadows, yell at me, because I can't see that well up here. Okay, well, you I can see, yes. We'll repeat the question. So, did you want to repeat it? I mean,
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the question is that why were the bits about Cher's childhood backstory? There's 2 scenes about that, and why were they included so late in the film? And that was very intentional. I mean, I think one of the things that I learned from working on my previous project, Crip Camp, is you have to be so mindful of not allowing people to go into the kind of tropey traps that people go into when they're dealing with things like disability or sexuality that we have these knee-jerk reactions to because of kind of how we've been pre-programmed. And so what I think all of us here, especially myself and Eileen Meyer, our editor, we were very, very concerned that people not spend the whole film trying to look at Cher's behavior and what happened to her as an outgrowth of trauma that she had suffered in her youth, because we all have trauma in our youth, and Shere Hite did something great, and so we wanted to give her the treatment that one would give to someone who, like to a man, who had accomplished something great, and really start with her at her desk doing her work, and being her amazing self. And then it also seemed really important to us that at some point in the narrative that Cher also become like the women that she had surveyed, so that her backstory, the things that were happening to her, were kind of coming in like they were coming in about all these other women. And I felt that, I hoped that especially was true of that very last scene where she talks about her first sort of sexual memory in childhood, which she included in her autobiography and wrote about in such a beautiful way, and Dakota voiced in such an extraordinary way. And I hoped that would stand in for everyone has an experience like that, but nobody ever talks about it. And so yeah, it was kind of peeling back the onion, but really also just trying to let people get to know her and make the film, framed around her actual work.
Great question. Oh, over here.
Hi, I am Vice President of the National Women's Rights Organization.
Well, I mean, I guess I hope that. Yeah, I mean, I think when someone is discredited and knocked around and their character kind of assassinated and they're unable to publish their books anymore, and I think people start to distance themselves from that person, and the person stops becoming known, and it's a kind of like. A writer who wrote a review of this used a phrase to describe this, which I absolutely loved, but I don't want to take credit for, which is cultural amnesia, And I think there is a kind of cultural amnesia that happens when that occurs, when that phenomenon occurs. And it is really stunning the extent to which it happened to somebody who did something so extraordinary. But she's not the only person, obviously, that happens to, In fact, Phyllis Chesler recommended I read a book by a feminist named Dale Spender called Women of Ideas and What Men Have Done to Them, which is a kind of a badass title. But it is just a really sad illustration of kind of woman after woman after woman after woman who did something great and then had something kind of like this, happen to them. So that's why I think we've forgotten her. Yeah. Yeah. That's a shorter way of saying it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right behind you. Yep. Why did the film end when it did and not spend more time on her in her time while she was in Paris?
Yeah, I mean, we decided to make the primary arc of the film the work, like I said, and the major work that she did here, and also to really set it in primarily in New York, and sort of her coming to New York and accomplishing this great thing and becoming this great force, and then the part of the film that was in Europe was sort of a third act, which was very important, but it to me it felt like that was about the beautiful work that Shere did with Iris and her participating in the creation of these images and kind of taking something that had been very painful for her and kind of turning it around and making it something that was really empowering and beautiful. And so, I mean, we also kind of thought about doing a series at one point. And there are so many parts of this story that could be expanded upon. And I mean, the Paris chapter could be a whole film unto itself. So, but thank God, Iris, you took those photos with Shere and did that work with her, because I think otherwise the film would be too heavy and depressing. We needed that reclamation and that kind of rebirth. So thank you.
So all the archival footage from the 80s, and did someone try to has someone tried to make a film about Shere before? Is that what? Yeah.
Yeah, the Elizabeth Vargas piece was aired. It was really cut down. I mean, I think my personal feeling is that Shere was directing at some point, like that amazing shot of her sitting in the theater listening to Friedrich play the piano. I feel like that must have been Shere's idea. It was so beautiful. But it was really condensed into kind of a piece about. Gosh, Kim, do you remember the name of that piece? Yeah, sort of a weekly show, so not really a film, but that was the extraordinary thing, was that we had access to the rushes, of that, and also the amazing interview that NBC did in 1976, which was incredible. Like I find it incredible to imagine a female reporter in 1976 going down into Shere's basement apartment and setting up lights and interviewing her about that project and talking about clitoral stimulation, And I found it incredible that all these news anchors from the time, I mean, that was one of the things that kind of stunned everybody when we were starting to look at the footage, was that the conversation that was happening on TV at that time, and the fact that, Geraldo Rivera was participating in this and saying at the end of his show, guys, please send in your survey about male sexuality to Shere Hite. This could be really important. Like, people really believed that there was a cultural conversation that could happen, that could lead to something positive. And that's something I feel we've lost, I don't feel like we still have that sort of in our society, that undercurrent. broadly speaking, to the level that it would rise onto, our nightly news stations. So, so that I thought was stunning and important too, just to bring people back to that moment in history when people were organizing and making such a huge difference, and really trying to think about how could we deconstruct, these preconceived ideas about what sex is and make it something better that would enable all of us to have better, richer lives and relationships.
Yeah, you in the back? Did everyone hear? No? Okay, he was asking about Dakota Johnson, how her vocal performance was so rich, and how that all came to be, and yeah, I think I got the gist of it.
I love Dakota Johnson, and she turned out to be a huge fan of Shere Hite's and a big supporter and executive producer on this project. And her performance, we had actually laid in as temp our editor Eileen Meyer's voice, and Eileen had this very particular tone to the way she was reading that really seemed to work, and also her age, which is similar to Dakota's. So we kind of had a template for knowing that kind of age and rhythm and was going to work. And Dakota said, well, do you want me to try to sound like Shere Hite? And I said, no, I definitely don't. I didn't want some kind of like fake version of Shere, or it to feel acted. I said, just please try to tap into the emotional intensity of what Shere is saying, and the feeling of it, but please don't do that. And that's why it's so extraordinary to me that every screening somebody tells me that they can't tell the difference between Dakota and Shere, that they just kind of slip into feeling like Dakota is Shere. But I think, she really does love Shere Hite. And she really studied the film and really thought about it. And while she was reading, she would say things like, "Can you believe she fucking said this? Isn't that cool? Don't you wish you had said that?" It was a real admiration, but also I think just like an incredible amount of empathy that she had for what Shere had gone through and how brave she had been. So when Eileen and I finished the recording session, we were so excited. We went back to the hotel here in New York, and we stayed up all night cutting it in. And we would drop in a line and we would start to cry because we felt like we were kind of getting at something that even with all our months and months of research and editing, we hadn't fully tapped into yet, and Dakota tapped into.
So our venue manager has let me know that we have time only for one more question. But in lieu of asking one more question, I would like to ask all the people who participated and whose voices are in the film to come up here, and I'd like to have a photograph with you and Nicole. I think that is something we cannot miss this opportunity to do. So let's please come up, and maybe some of you could. I'm still directing. We have a bit of room over here. Maybe we could come around. Yeah, just stretch out here. As you can see, this wasn't rehearsed or planned. Oh, this is so beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, all of you, for being here and sharing your story. The Disappearance of Shere Hite opens in New York a week from Friday, November 17th. Tell everyone. Come back and see it. I'm going to be here. Oh, okay, you tell us. Okay.
Hello, I'm Iris Brosch. You saw me. Nicole, thank you. It's a masterpiece you did. So there will be some unseen pictures I created, like a response to all the attacks Shere went at the Georges Berger Gallery this Thursday. There are some flyers lying outside also. So I hope you come and visit them, because it's a kind of an answer in a really poetic and feminine way she created together with me. So I hope to see you next Thursday.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any last words, Nicole?
Thank you very, very much for coming and celebrating this moment with all of us. Thank you.
Awesome.